Hello guys, this is the part 8 of my Python series, and in this we will learn about exception handling. What is exception handling, how to use try catch block, and what is else and finally. Okay, so let's go ahead. Okay, so when we talk about exceptions uh, so let's first understand there may be two type of error in our code. Okay, first one is if you have done some syntax error. Okay, so suppose you have written something wrong. Suppose I have written if statement and then I forgot to give the colon and then I wrote the next statement. So in that case it will give us an error, but that will be a syntax error. Okay, so let's go ahead and see the example of a syntax error. So what I will do, I will make a file here. So I will make a file er.py and let's make a syntax error. Okay, so I say if 5 less than 7, and I will say print yes. Okay, now when I try to run the code, we get an error. So this is a syntax error. Why? Because we have missed something grammatically. Okay, so now the second error maybe the second error is of exception. Okay, exception, and exceptions occur at runtime. So when you execute the code, exception occurs. So what is exception? Exception is basically we can say as a some unexpected thing to the code. Suppose you are trying to read a file but the file not present, or suppose you want to connect to a database but the connection is down, link is down, or suppose you are trying to divide a number by 0. So as we know, as a mathematics rules, we can't divide the number by 0. Okay, so it a kind of exception, and to handle the exceptions we make use of try and catch blocks. So what is a try catch block? Suppose when we are writing some code, so what is the syntax of try catch? We will first write try. Okay, then we give colon, then we write the critical code. What is a critical code? The code that may give a error is known as critical code. Suppose I am saying any critical code. Okay, critical code, and then we write except and the name of exception. So in Python there are multiple type of exception. So we have like something you can say file not found error when file is not found, index error when you are trying to access array index which is not available. Suppose we have a array of index up to 3 and you are trying to access the 10th element. In that scenario it will give us index error. So and there is a master exception known as exception. Okay, so it's known as exception. So it is known as the master exception. Okay, so the syntax is like first we'll write try, then we will give column, then we will write the code which we want to write, and then we'll write except name of the exception as and any variable name if you want. Suppose I'm taking e, and then you want to do or you want to print the message which you want to print. So suppose I say print error. Okay, so this is a correct way to handle exception in your code. Okay, now let's go ahead and see other keywords related to this. So other keywords are else. Okay, so else. So first we write try, then we write the exceptions, then we write else, then we give colon, and else block only execute if there is no error in try block. So if no error, okay, then only this else block will execute. Then there is called finally. Okay, finally. So finally will run whether there is exception or not. So it will run in any case. Okay, whether there is exception or not. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and see this in code. Okay, suppose okay, now let's go ahead and see the practical example of try and catch block. Suppose we are trying, I have an array. Okay, so I will say I will create a list. I will say a equal to 1 comma 2. Okay, now let's try to access the fourth index, which we know there is no fourth index because we have only 2 elements. So write print a of 4. Okay, I will say print a of 4. Now when you go ahead and run this code, what will happen? There will be a long list of traceback which user can't understand. So it's good for developer. They we can like, it makes sense for us that list index out of range, but the end user may not understand this error. Okay, so to handle this kind of scenarios, we can make use of try and catch block. Okay, so we can give a proper message to the user. So let try to do this, handle this with try and catch block. So what I will do, I will write try. Okay, and in try I will print this. Then in I will write the except block. Okay, so as I have already told you that syntax, we have to write the except block, and then I know it may generate the index error. So be more specific about the error. Okay, so I will write like print I will say array size exceeded. Okay, array size exceeded. Now when I run this code, I will not get that long error which was a junk. I will go the proper message. I will get the proper message that array size exceeded. Okay, and let's make use of else and finally then. So what we can do, let put it here. Okay, so let's do something like this. Let's try to read a file. Okay, so what I will do, I will say f equal to open. I am not using context manager here in purposely because I want to show the use of try and catch block. So what I will do, I will write a file which is not present here. Okay, so I will say abcd dot txt. As you can see, abcd is not in my directory, so I know it will give generate error. So just to demonstrate, I will write like, okay, now I will say let's say print. Okay, print, and I will print the contents of this file. I will say f dot read. Okay, so as per experience, we know while opening a file, we can get an error that file not found error. Okay, so I will try to handle that exception here. I will say except file not found error. Okay, and I will say print file in quotes, sorry, file not found. Okay, so when I run my code, I get a proper error message that file not found. Okay, this make more sense to me rather than having a long trace back of like the details of the error. Okay, so now suppose I am making some mistake which is not, which we are not handling. So I am saying a equal to b. Okay, and in my code I have not defined b, so it's a name error. I have not defined b. So when I'm now trying to run my Python file, so what will happen? Okay, first it will say file not find error, because it catch the first error and stop the code. It will not go to the second error. Okay, it will not go to the second error. So just comment this, and now when I run this, you can say I got a name error. Okay, so I got b is not defined, which I was expecting also. Okay, so suppose we are uncertain about which error will occur in our code. Okay, so in that scenario we can make use of exception class. Okay, so I will make use of this master exception. Okay, so the work of this master exception is it can handle any kind of exception. So just say accept exception as, and let's make a variable here e. Okay, and now just print the error message which we got. Okay, so now if we run this, name b is not defined, we are giving getting a proper message. Okay, so now we can or I can print a custom message here, say variable not be defined. Okay, variable not defined, something like this. Okay, or to be more generic statement is some error occurred. Okay, so now when I run this, I will get message like some error occurred. Okay, so what how we can arrange this try and except statement? We write the generic exception first. If we write the master exception first, it will not go ahead and check for the generic exception. Okay, suppose let's cut this from here and go ahead to the first line here, and let's uncomment this line. Okay, uncomment this line. Okay, so now when I run this, I will not get this message which say file not found. I will simply get a message like say some error occurred. Let's go ahead and run this. As you can see, I am getting the message like some error occurred. But why what should we get the message like file not found? Because it's a file not found error. So always keep the generic exception at the common exception at the last. Okay, so I kept the master exception at the last. Okay, now when I run this, now I am getting the proper message that file not found. Okay, now let's talk about else block. So else block will execute only if there is no error in the try and catch block. So I will write like print no error. Okay, so I will say no error, and in this case it will not get printed because there is a error. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to run this. As you can see, no error get not printed. Why? Because there is a error in this try catch block. So let's comment this file, or let's delete these two lines, simply say pass. So now when I run this, I get the message no error because there is no error in the try block. Okay, now let's talk about finally. So finally get executed in both of the cases. Okay, so write a message like I will get printed in both cases. Okay, and now when I run this, see, no error, I will get printed in both cases. So when there is no error in try block, else get printed and finally get printed. now let's create a error in our if try block. Okay, so now when I run this, you can see the error message get printed and the finally block get printed. Okay, so it's get printed, like I will get printed in both cases. So in finally block we keep those kind of code which we want to execute anyhow. Suppose we want to close, suppose we are dealing with database and some error occurred, so we will close the database anyhow. Okay, we will try to close the database anyhow. Okay, we can write a code to close a file, close file. So if there is some error, whether the operation got successful or not, at last we will close the file. Okay, suppose you are having you are in C or CPP, you are dealing with pointers, so you will delete that pointer to save the memory. So in finally block we keep those kind of code which we want to execute anyhow. Okay, so in try we write the critical code which may generate error, then we write the exceptions, then we in else part we write the code which we want to execute only when there is no error in try block, and then finally we write those kind of code which we want to execute anyhow. Okay, so hope you understood this part. Okay, and there is also a concept of custom exception. So what are custom exception? We can write, apart from these exception, we can write our own exceptions. Okay, so that I will tell you in detail when we learn about class object, but for now just see a glance. So I will write a class my error and I will inherit the master exception and I will say pass. I am not writing anything there, and I will go to try, and to raise exception manually we can say raise and give the name of the error. Okay, now I will handle this error. I will say accept my error. Okay, and you can print any message you want. Suppose I will print this is my error. Okay, so now when I run this, you can say message got printed, this is my error. So we have written a custom exception here. Okay, so this we can take use of if you want to create a new kind of exception, like suppose we want to define a range for the user to enter the number, and if we exceed that range then we can generate range exception or kind of something like that. Okay, so hope you understand this part. Thank you, bye bye.